Now, the latest on the aftermath of Hurricane Helene and the desperate search for people still missing. The death toll climbing to at least 166 people across the southeast.
Meow, Huples cat. I'm going to show you a car flood survival kit. I am aware there's a lot of advice online. Most of it's kind of odd. For example, have inflatable kayaks. Popping around an inflatable kayak in an area that's just had a massive flood is probably not the best idea.
Is it good? Get him! Hurry up here, get up there. Pull him in. Pull him in, quick, quick, quick.
You need to be very experienced in whitewater canoeing or kayaking, and I'm definitely not that. You're actually probably going to die trying that sort of thing. The other advice you tend to get online is to have bottled water. Now, bottled water is always a good idea, but it's heavy and it's going to run out. What are you going to do on the third or fourth day after the flood and when you're still trapped in your building and you can't get out and nobody's going to drop you water from the sky? Well, it's not going to bother you because you've got a Huples Cat flood survival kit. So as you can see, there's quite a few items, and these items are not my flood survival kit for various reasons, which I will explain now. First things first, if you want a flood survival kit, you want to put it inside dry bags. First thing you're going to need for a car, home or a hiking kit is this. Your essential medications that you don't need, that you've stored up, that are in date, inside a bag that will not get wet no matter what happens to you. Okay, what's your other priority in a massive flood situation? Come on now, don't be shy, let me know. What do you think, other than essential medications, you need as the next priority if you're involved in a massive flood? If you're going to drive in floods or flood-prone areas, absolutely have a PFD, a personal flotation device, for everybody in the car.
Moments earlier on a flooded Leichhardt highway in Western Queensland, the foolish, frightening decision caught on dash cam.
Saying no go, babe. Keep going, you have to keep going now.
They push on, start to float. Seconds later,
We're just going off the edge. Babe!
Get your purse.
then eerie silence, heavy breathing, water rising around them. At the mercy of unharmed.
Have a decent whistle on it to attract attention. Folded down flat, they're going to fit most people's vehicles. You should have these in your house and in your car. So this is going in my flood kit.
Did you know a PFD and life jacket are different? A life jacket has more buoyancy than a PFD, and most of it is in the front, so it can turn an unconscious person over in the water, allowing them to breathe. A PFD is designed to keep a conscious person afloat upright in calm conditions, but not necessarily turn them over, hence a life jacket is always the best option in an emergency.
Now, kayaking or canoeing is actually a great sport, and in Ontario, in the great country of Canada, you legally have to carry certain items when you are boating. This is two examples of them, and I would recommend you have one of these in your home and one of these in your car. You don't need to be a boater to get these. They're about $30 Canadian. They're reasonably waterproof. This one has a semi-waterproof flashlight and some batteries. These will go off quite quickly. Every few years, change these out. But this is great for getting around in the dark in a flood zone, but also for attracting attention. This can be used to bail water out but you have to have 50 feet of water resistant, and mostly they use nylon, water that can float. At the end of it, there's a little buoy. The ability to be tied to the bank is a really good idea. You don't necessarily want to get into water because even 6 inches of water can sweep you off your feet and kill you. So rope, especially rope that's designed for water use, is a good idea. Now this has a whistle in it, and I took it off and put it on my PFD. I actually like to have whistles on all my personal flotation devices. This is a slightly more expensive version. It has a slightly reflective surface. This might be good for signalling, I wouldn't count on it. What I did was I added some cordage to this. And at the end of the cordage is the whistle I don't need right now, but it's in there if I need it. This is a slightly more waterproof and more expensive flashlight. It's on, it's off. If it's on and you decide to manually press this a few times gently and get used to it because it takes a bit of skill, you can send Morse code messages or just general messages. So what's the emergency code for boaters in distress saying I need help? ... 3 dots, which stands for S in Morse code. Now the SOS is ... dash 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 ... But it's actually useful because it could probably stand up well in the rain. As you can see, check the batteries out, change them frequently. And I keep my survival kit in original bags wherever possible. It helps to preserve them. A more fun bailing bucket and a more expensive version of the rope that floats. Always a good idea.
The situation remains dire and hard-hit in North Carolina.
You've got these shipping containers tossed over by this raging river, almost like toys. A U-Haul truck back there, more of those box trucks scattered throughout the trees. I mean, the devastation here is extensive, and this area is in desperate need of relief.
So because I have a lot of flashlights in my home, I'm not actually going to pack this in my home flood kit. This will be with my kayaks, and it would also be in the car if I lived in a flood prone area and decided to drive, which you should never do.
Would you take such a risk driving one of the world's most expensive cars through a flood? That's exactly what the guy behind the wheel of this white Lamborghini is doing in this video that shows him plowing right through a drenched intersection in San Diego, California. The water is so deep it nearly reaches the windshield. One online comment went, "Some people have more dollars than sense." The sports car, a Lamborghini Gallardo, costs a whopping $200,000. And look, it doesn't even stall. Once it was out of the flood, it sped off like it was no big deal. Makes you wonder if that car is not just expensive, but also waterproof.
Now the next priority is arguable. I'm going to go with a first aid kit, some medications in here, some other stuff. It's not waterproof, but if you put it inside a dry bag, it magically becomes reasonably waterproof. This kit's been designed for flood type injuries, so you need a first aid kit. It's going to be waterproof inside all of your flood kits. What else do I need? Well, definitely in the house, I need work gloves, and I expect I will use them outside the house, so these are going to go in my car kit for the flood. In the house I'm going to have a pretty good wood saw and a pretty good hammer, because you're not to go into the attic during a flood, but once you get to the level I'm at, if it's water still rising, I have to go onto the roof somehow, and that could be dangerous because I don't want to fall in the water and be swept away. But if you actually can saw through the roof, the risk of going in the attic suddenly becomes null and void. And I would definitely give myself as many options to stay in the house during a flood as possible.
Rod and his wife Kim Ashby were inside their home as it floated down the river.
We know that a neighbor saw the house actually hit the bridge, and at that point the house started to collapse.
A tree separating them. Rod rescued Tuesday night. His wife Kim still missing.
Losing your most loved one when you had her in your arms and now you don't. I don't imagine there's much that can compare to that.
She's a breast cancer survivor. It's hard not to hold on to that hope.
But a saw and a hammer are going to be of limited utility. Now inside the house I'd also have nails and use this for rebuilding. A temporary roof's a better idea than having no roof. But for my car kit, my walking around kit, I'm going to use a product like this. It's a wood saw. It's going to get me through most small pieces of wood, and that might be useful to me as I try and make my way out of the flood zone. The house kit's going to have a bunch of tarps. I really want to make sure I can cover the roof if the roof's been blown off. The out and about kit might have something like this. This is a hammock and a tarp. Personally, I'm not going to go for this. It's heavy. And I have them in the house and I can use them if I want. What I'm going to go for is compactor trash bags. These are absolutely a brilliant idea. There's lots of uses for these in a flood, lots of uses for these generally, and definitely uses for these in any disaster you want to come up with. But 3 or 4 of these, definitely per person. You can use them for many, many things. I want a solar rechargeable light of any type. But you can also get these, and these can be expensive, but I wouldn't go expensive. It has a flashlight on it. bright, and emergency. Absolutely great for signalling, especially at night, and even during the day when it's overcast to some extent, and definitely during a flood it's probably going to be overcast. But this has a couple of things that make it better. It has hand crank. You have to do quite a bit of this and be careful, these break easily, but it actually gives you something to do. It also has a fairly ineffective but useful solar panel here, so if there is sunlight you can charge it that way. Now, you're not going to use one of these to read at night and play games with your teenage kids. You're in a survival situation. Go to sleep when it's dark, but have somebody awake listening for helicopters so you can signal them. But go to bed when it gets dark. Don't use precious power for normal functioning. Every hour or so,
talk to you about the tunnel.
I was so struck, Shoshana's comments about the construction. The mind boggles at how complicated.
depending on where you are,
A dam project called the Muskrat Falls.
you may have to do things like that. I have so many hills around me, the reception's pretty bad. And in a major flood event, there may have been a major wind event, and you may not be getting radio from the normal sources. So having something like this is a good idea. At home and in the car kit. You can carry a solar panel like this. I am not going to. This for me is very much a home survival kit. I don't need this in the car. I'm not going to shove it in the car. If I have a problem in the car, I'm going to spend 2 weeks outside of the house maximum, and then I'm coming home where all my gear is. Your situation might be different. Insect repellent and a form of netting. I highly recommend you have this with you. Oh, and another thing for signalling? You might want to consider a high visibility vest. Slightly more warmth, etc. I'm not actually going to carry this with me because in my flood zone car kit I have a PFD which is bright red. But this is always useful, especially if people are shooting wild animals out of season. Okay, what's my next priority? I've got my signaling set up immediately, I've got my lights, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to float, I'm ready to have rope to rescue with me. What am I going to need? Well, if you said water, you'd be right. If you said putting water in bottles and carrying it with you, you'd be dead wrong. And yet I see that over and over and over. Cheapest, lightest way of dealing with the water situation? Water purification tabs. You'll notice they're in a water sealed bag, and you'll need 1 or 2 of these with you. More in the house. You can put water in this from wherever you can find water. Remember, you are in a flood, and you can put 1 or 2 of these in, wait 4 hours with this not exposed to sunlight, and you can drink the water. Having 2 means that you can always have fresh water ready to drink rather than always having to wait. And you want a micro towel so you can catch most of the gunk before it goes into the bottle to be sterilised. It'll make it quicker and more palatable for you. But what are you going to do? Are you actually going to carry this stuff? Yes. But I'm also going to carry a gravity water filter. This is the one I use all the time. This is my replacement one, so I have it ready to go. The LifeStraw Mission 12, the LifeStraw Gravity is no use. Be very careful what infections you have in your area and make sure whatever gravity filter you get does 3 things. 1, it works for everything in your area, because I don't want beaver fever. It's lightweight and transportable. This is, and it's simple and reliable to use. Some water filters like the Sawyer can be very complex to use and fail often. I've been using this actual filter for about 3 years, quite a bit. It's working just fine.
This morning, the desperation for food, water, and power in the wake of Hurricane Helene reaching a breaking point.
We just need a way in and out of here.
6,300 National Guard troops racing to get aid to those in need, along with an army of volunteers. The death toll skyrocketing. At least 166 people killed across 6 states and hundreds of people still missing. New images from storm-ravaged areas continue to emerge. In Irwin, Tennessee, ambulances towed away where dozens were rescued from the roof of that hospital. Dump trucks filled with trees and debris. And back here in North Carolina, dramatic dashboard camera footage capturing this moment that a couple narrowly missed being swept up in a landslide in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Landslides and flooding washing away roads and bridges, making it nearly impossible to get to those in need. You're cut off.
We cut off.
Hang on, Huples. What happens if the floods knocked out the nuclear power plant upstream from you? What are you going to do then? Well, you might want to evacuate. And in the house you should have bottled stored water. I do. I just don't plan to carry it around with me in a flood. It's heavy. You could have a product like this. It's a gravity water filter, and it will filter about 50 litres of water for me and give me clean, sterile water that's got no radiation in it. After then I'll be drinking radiation, so I want to leave. So that's water. You could use sodas. You don't need to in this particular case, but if you're stuck in your house and it becomes sunlight and you've got the bottles, go for it. The next thing people are going to think about is food. And again, they're wrong. 2 t-shirts, 2 pairs of underwear, 2 pairs of socks. And I'm going to wear my clothes till utter destruction occurs. Now you could get a poncho, and everybody recommends ponchos. I do not. A poncho makes you very hot depending on the time of year, and actually does very little to protect you from heavy rain or falling in the water from getting wet. It's much better to have an actual coat that you would actually use normally that's water and wind repellent. In other words, that doesn't go into a kit because you should have it with you in the car. In my car kit, in my go kit, I'll have gloves and I will have hats and stuff like this and scarves to try and keep me warm. Depending on the time of year, depending on what you want to do, depending on where you live, is actually what you're going to actually pack in the car kit for this. I'm still not going for food. Prescription glasses, make sure you have 2 pairs. Make sure you have sunglasses. You're going to really need these. Wool synthetic blankets are a great idea, but again, I'm not going to carry this around with me. I'm in a major flood zone. It's terrible. This is not going to stay dry, and it's certainly not going to be much use. It's heavy, it's bulky, and it's going to get wet. I don't need this unless I'm in my house, in which case I'll have this in my house in a waterproof container, ready to go once I've repaired the roof and maybe the windows. Cordage, insufficient. Enough, but it's expensive. In all honesty, I just need twine. Alright, food now? Nope. Maps of your area with a spare compass inside a waterproof map case. A critical need, especially if there's been a power outage. Okay, so what about food? I like to use a BioLite wood stove for various reasons. Not going to be using that probably in a major flood for a while because the water's going to make the wood wet. So I do have some of these now. I got them recently and they're good enough. They work well. They're also heavy. I do actually have one in my emergency car kit in case I have to stay somewhere for 2 weeks over the winter because of a nuclear event. I'm a little bit paranoid. But in terms of flood preparation, no. You can have something like that in your house. You really don't need to have it in your car kit. Different types of bars, that's all you're going to need. Just use these. If you're desperate for coffee, take these with you and put a little bit of the powder on your tongue whenever you get a major craving. You don't need to be boiling water and carrying a stove and fuel to do this. This is about survival. So you're not going to take a light like this, and you're not going to be carrying fans like this, though I would suggest you might want these in your home kit, but I'm definitely not carrying them. In my car kit I have these, and I've seen a few people recommend them. If you're allergic or cannot stand coconut, don't get them because that's basically what it is. It's coconut fat. They last about 5 years, maybe 10 years at a pinch. They go quite stale. But I would in fact put 1 or 2 of these in a car anyway, even if you're not a crazy prepper. It's always a good idea to have food and water and clothing in the car just in case. For a long time camping I use these, and they're actually a good idea. They're a good fire starter if nothing else as tinder. So you want some sort of toilet roll, and this is good enough for that. Or you could just go cheap and take a toilet roll, squish it up and then put it inside a plastic bag. But what I'm gravitated towards are wet wipes. I use these for my bottom and for general cleaning. Not the same wipe usually. Fairly light, fairly compact. You're not going to get spoiled by being close to water. If you have the space, you could take one of these for your poop. You don't need to. You can actually do it by hand or use sticks. You can carry these, but then you've got to start boiling water and you've got to carry fuel and a stove. So don't carry these. So I'm always going to go for stuff like this. Okay, I'm going to pack up my car flood kit.
And the number of relief agencies here on the ground in Asheville continues to grow by the day. Their operations also expanding. In fact, the group that we featured yesterday here on GMA says that they brought in more than 30,000 cases of water. They also plan to open up more feeding shelters throughout the Asheville area today. We've seen more and more power crews pour in from all over the southeast. But again, that relief is growing. But again, it can't come fast enough for the folks here still reeling.
There you have it. That's the emergency basic flood kit. But hold on a minute, there is some other stuff. So my car's broke down. Put my hat on so I can see. Don't want to get the rain on my glasses, and also in case of sunlight and I can't find my sunglasses. The PDF goes on so I don't fall into holes and get drowned. At least I can float and optimize my survival possibilities. And you always have it done up both ways so it can be seen I have extra warmth. As I mentioned earlier, I have a compass in here. It's a backup one, but I do have a few pockets. Air horn into the pocket only after I've made it fairly ruggedly waterproof. So it's right there and I can grab it and I can go boo boo boo, help me. Remember, 3 blasts, 3 lights, that's what you want to do. 3 means help me now. I'm going to eat one of these before I set off, and I'll put one here. And that's going to be it until I rest up for the day or the night, depending on the conditions. I want this fairly close to me, both as a defensive weapon and also as something that I can use if I get obstructions in my way. I don't want to be rooting through the pack to try and find this. So I can secure this right here so it's ready to use if I need it. The other thing with this is I can actually carry a big knife as well, but if you do carry a full tank, because you might want to use it as a pry bar to get in places. Because I'm eyeglass dependent, I'm going to carry the sunglasses close to me so I can use them. They're actually going to go in my pocket. Alright, I've got good waterproof trail shoes on because I always wear them all the time, and I advise you start doing that now. It's a good emergency preparedness thing. And I got my bag. I'm ready to walk home, or I'm ready to walk to a nearest town, or I'm ready to walk up a mountain to get away from the flood. I'm ready to do various things. I'm not going to be happy, I'm not going to be comfortable, but I'm way more prepared to be caught in my vehicle in a flood than I would be if I didn't have this, or if I just had my emergency car kit.
Oh my god, he's going in the water. Oh my god. Oh my god. Get out! Get out! Get out!
Oh, and make sure you have one of these as well, and make sure it's tied to you. Well, that's it for me. Everybody's kit should look differently, everybody's priorities should be different, everybody's locations are different. But a flood car kit is designed to keep you near to the car for 5 nights or more, or to allow you to walk for 5 days or more, home or to a town for self-rescue. Be very cautious about self-rescue. Make sure you really know where you are, you really know what's going on. Stay away from power lines and be very careful. The best thing to do if you know a massive flood is coming into your area is to stay at home or take your credit card and go on vacation for a bit, far away from where the tropical storm or the hurricane's going to hit. This is a last-ditch emergency survival thing. And it staggers me how many people out there do drive around in flood conditions and none of them have one of these in their car. And I can guarantee in a large part of America, certainly in Canada, people have these in their garden sheds for when they go kayaking. So if you're going to go around driving and it's heavy rainfall or a flood, stick these in the car. If you have to get out of a car and the car's bobbing along, you'll be really happy you've got a life jacket on. That's it for me. Toodles. This has been a Hydrophobic Wolfie Terrier production 2024.